Hello y'all, it's me again. I'm back with another video. Now, as you've read from the YouTube title, I'm going to be talking about the new Batman film. Now, this is one that I've been excited for a while now. I've heard a lot of people talk about sort of the craziness to this movie, the new edge that this movie gives, like the Robert Pattinson being the new Batman, and this is the darkest one since The Dark Knight. Oh my goodness, this is a dark movie, yet it's PG-13. I've heard a lot of stuff about this movie, and honestly, for a while, I've been kind of excited to watch it. When I first saw the trailer, when it first got released, I was very hesitant, but upon rewatches of the trailer and upon new trailers and just hearing more and more come out about it, I was honestly really excited to watch this, and I had the pleasure of watching it last night.
Are we excited to see the Batman this evening?
I've had time to really think of what I liked, what I didn't like, and I'm about to go into those right now. So before I get into the stuff I really liked about the movie, let me first get into my few cons with the movie. Now, one of the things I noticed about this movie, and I'll go into the tone later on, is that there are a few moments, obviously, where they'll have a bit of jokes in there, and sometimes the humor really didn't work for me, but there's so few jokes in this film that it doesn't really take away or detract from the experience, but it does kind of feel out of place in some scenes. There are also moments where Catwoman sort of gives pretty cringeworthy dialogue, stuff about like 9 lives at one point. At one point, Batman asks, "Why do you have all these cats?" And she says, like, "I have a thing for strays."
You got a lot of cats.
I have a thing about strays.
I don't know, like, it's not the worst thing ever, but it was kind of distracting to see in this movie. I also thought the action near the beginning was kind of meh. I was a little iffy on the action, but that's something that quickly and clearly becomes a lot better as the film progresses. And I was also kind of iffy on the score near the beginning of the film as well. I think that main theme of Batman is something that's going to become iconic in the years to come. Really, it's such a good theme, and I'm really proud of what was being made for this movie. But yeah, there's some moments where the score just feels a little out of place. Specifically, there's a scene where Catwoman is breaking into a safe and they play music, and the scene could have been a lot more impactful and a lot better without that music. But again, with that being said, there's just like a few scenes, but it was enough to at least somewhat distract me from it. And the last and final con I have of this movie is that at the beginning and at the end, there's like weird voiceover bits of Batman speaking about just what's going on and what he represents. I don't know about y'all, but I didn't really think this would work for the movie. I find a lot of pleasure in rewatches of like The Dark Knight and stuff like that, with the whole monologues at the end and at the beginning, just that whole bit, like, and usually it's not coming from Batman, it's coming from like Gordon or from Alfred or from some other kind of character, but coming directly from Batman, I don't know. Like, the movie could have done perfectly fine without these scenes, because they're still showing the visuals to show like how you're supposed to feel about everything going on, but when it's being told to you, it could sometimes feel like it was only put there to appease the audiences and tell you how to think, and I don't think this movie needed that at all. But putting those to the side, let's go into the stuff I liked about this movie, because I really liked this movie. First and foremost, I thought the cinematography was spectacular in this movie. There'd be moments where it shows certain characters and the background is not only blurred but like distorted in a way. It really adds to like the eeriness of what's being shown in the movie and just creates like such an uncomfortable feeling within the viewer, or at least within myself. I also thought the use of color was so well done in this movie. It's very bland looking and gray when it has to be, but there are these amazing moments of action or vibrancy where you can really tell that the director wanted to go all out with showing just the atmosphere to everything. I thought the use of color was really well done in this movie, especially at the end in a scene involving Batman using some sort of torchlight. I thought that was really cool. I also have to get into this with the PG-13 rating. I will say this, the film seems like it really wants to be rated R, but that being said, it does the most it can with that PG-13 rating. And it is dark, dude. This is a fucking dark movie. Coming from me, who's seen a lot of shit, I'm very surprised at how dark this movie was allowing itself to be. People have compared this movie to stuff like Zodiac, Seven, and the Saw films. And there's one specific scene at the beginning where it shows footage, and the footage is like so shocking. I was not expecting to see that kind of thing in this movie. I was honestly like, my jaw dropped and I leaned over to my friend Isaac and I was like, holy shit. But yeah, this is a really dark film. It's more of like a crime drama, and it has Batman on it, and it just works so well with everything that this film is trying to be. Matt Reeves clearly wanted to take this Batman character and put it in a new direction, and I thought the film did a great job at doing that. Going back to the score, I know I said I was kind of iffy on it. It was one of the few cons, but dude, when it works, it really fucking works. There are these moments of triumphant scenes where the score will just help so much with it, and it gives me like goosebumps almost. The main theme, while played over and over again, has enough different renditions to sort of make each scene that it's included in feel much more important with that song, and stuff like that just does such a great job. Like it really is such a memorable score that I think will go down as one of the most iconic in the future. I hope so. I thought the opening was fucking awesome. I like that there's no, I hope this isn't a spoiler, but there's no credit moments. It doesn't have like this whole starring, written by, it just begins. It doesn't waste its fucking time, and that's where I'm gonna go at another pro of this movie. This film is almost 3 hours long, and at no point did I feel the runtime. Yes, it's a long movie, but it doesn't feel boring. It doesn't waste any time with any bullshit. It doesn't have much dialogue in the film, but that being said, everything that's shown and everything that's presented to the viewer who's watching the film is purposeful and comes back later on. That's what I really liked about the movie. And you know, with stuff like that, it's really tough to make a Batman movie feel like a realistic film. Like obviously Christopher Nolan tried to do his own thing with the Dark Knight films. We don't talk about what Zack Snyder did with Batman, but with this one, it just feels very like, yes, this could happen. Like nothing feels so unrealistic and crazy to the point where like this takes place in like modern times with like modern phones and stuff like that, in a Gotham, New York like city with all this crime, and everything that occurs feels purposeful and like something again that could happen. And that's what makes the whole film feel so eerie, is that all this atrocious stuff that the viewer's viewing could happen and probably has happened. It's really fucking crazy to think about. Obviously with the ending and with what happens, maybe that's a little push on the realistic side, but at the end of the day, it's still a comic book movie, and it does a great job at being so, while also being a really well done and disturbing crime drama. And finally, the last thing I really want to emphasize is the acting. I thought everyone who was cast in this movie was perfectly cast and does such a great job at playing a different rendition, or sort of like that character that we've seen before in other films. Sure, we've seen other renditions of Catwoman in pop culture many times, like Michelle Pfeiffer, Anne Hathaway, Halle Berry, but how does Zoe Kravitz work? I think Zoe Kravitz is one of the best Catwoman I've ever seen, ever. She does such a great job at sort of playing like this character who is like as crime fighting as they are also trying to be sort of seductive. She does a great job at sort of being sarcastic while caring, you know, and I think this is a really interesting take on the character. Obviously, I'm not a huge fan of the comic books, but from what I've seen in the films, I think this is a really well casted Catwoman for this movie. I thought Robert Pattinson also does such a great job at playing probably the saddest portrayal of Batman I've ever seen put on film, and he does such a great job at sort of being like brooding, but at the same time, like you tell he gives a shit. And like I like that he doesn't talk a lot in the movie. A lot of his performance comes from his actions and the way he emotes to certain situations. He does such a great job at doing so. I thought Andy Serkis as Alfred also did such an amazing job, but I cannot talk about acting without going into Paul Dano as the Riddler. This is one of the scariest performances I've ever seen in a movie. I'm gonna be straight up right now. After seeing him in Prisoners, I was like, okay, yes, please play the Riddler once I heard about this casting decision, and he fucking killed it yet again. He is genuinely so terrifying and so creepy and does such a great job at playing this character that I legitimately had to like close my eyes and think of how Riddler's been portrayed in pop culture before then. Obviously you got Jim Carrey, who plays a very comedic Riddler and sort of like a more comic booky, like that's the more kid-friendly version of the Riddler. This one is not fucking kid-friendly. This guy's a fucking serial killer. He is obsessive. He is fucking batshit insane, and that's where I think Paul Dano perfectly comes in with that, because he has that sort of insane edge to him and like a creepy enough face to where you're like, yeah, people like this have existed, people like this do exist, and it's so disturbing to think about. That's really where the disturbing nature comes from the movie. The content itself, yes, pushes it really does for a PG-13 movie, but again, like, part of what disturbs me more than anything in a movie isn't shock value, it isn't gore, it isn't violence, it isn't all this shit. It's how realistic a certain situation occurs and is presented in a film. That's why something like the Poughkeepsie tapes and Saw, those films disturb me to my core, because yeah, they're seen as horror movies, but at the same time, those things could actually happen, and that's what makes that idea so disturbing to me. And the Batman beautifully does a great job at doing that. But again, it's such a well-crafted movie, and despite its few flaws, I really am so excited to check this one out again when I do have the opportunity to do so. I think this will go down as one of the best comic book movies in a long time. And while it's not my favorite out of the DC films, it's definitely one of the most tone-changing films I've seen in a while. And yes, like, you can compare it to other films. People did the same thing when the Joker came out with like King of Comedy and Taxi Driver and stuff like that. But this one does a really good job at just being its own thing. And similar to the Joker, I don't think it's ripping off these other films, but rather taking inspiration to try to do something new with these very well-known characters. And for that, I think this movie's a big success in what it's trying to do. And for that, I'm gonna have to give this movie a very high 8 out of 10. I think it might improve on rewatches. If not, it'll stay as good, but I think that is the perfect rating to go into what I thought about this movie. It is a little bit held down by those flaws, but again, it's just overall such a well-made movie and something that everyone should go check out. But yeah, that's what I thought about the new Batman movie. If you've seen it, let me know what you thought. If you haven't, go check it out. I hope this video made you want to go seek it out. That being said, thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay awesome, and go watch a movie. Peace.